Hitler is one of the most terrible names in Jewish history. It was during his time that the Jewish people suffered greatly and was even on the verge of extinction. Hitler's policy was fundamentally anti-Semitic. At first, the Jews were admired in rights, but later this policy led to their annihilation. The question arises, why did Hitler dislike Jews so much? We will talk about it in this issue. The first reason is the general atmosphere of intolerance towards Jews in Germany and in general in that time Europe. We should not think that Hitler was the inventor of anti-Semitism. Hatred of Jews has its roots in ancient times, starting from the time of Christ's birth and until the beginning of the 20th century was widespread among the European population. One should remember the same Jewish pogroms in the Russian Empire at the beginning of the 20th century, to which the authorities kept their eyes shut. As for Germany and the German population, as early as in the 19th century in Germany and Austria, a lot of nationalist and pan-Germanic movements emerged. He was the inventor of many policies that had a strong anti-Semitic color and considered Jews as enemies. And there were a lot of myths about Jews, such as that they commit ritual murders of Christian children. The People's Movement, which emerged at the beginning of the 19th century, called Jews an alien race and supported their extermination. And the famous ideologue Georg von Schenerer, he was an anti-Semite, influenced Hitler and his views. In general, the atmosphere in Europe, even in the 30th years of the 20th century, was very vorozhivayu in relation to Jews, and the reduction of their rights with the arrival of Hitler did not really bother the European authorities, who until the beginning of the Second World War, in principle, were loyal to him. That is why Hitler's anti-Semitic rhetoric worked so easily for the Germans. Hitler only strengthened people's perception that the Jews were the enemies responsible for all their troubles. This concept explained everything as simply as possible and clearly pointed to a single enemy. Another reason is the so-called stab in the back. The concept of stabbing in the back was popular in the German society at that time and was also supported by Hitler. What is in mind? A lot of Germans believed that Germany lost the First World War purely because of internal enemies, who ruined the army and then surrendered the country to the Entente. This theory blamed the Communists, Social Democrats, and of course Jews for the First World War. Their supporters believed that if it were not for these internal enemies, Germany would have been able to win the war because the German army in 1918 was still able to fight. The theory of conscription became even more popular after the fact that Germany signed the Capitulation Act without a single soldier of the Entente army crossing the German border. This understandably raised a lot of questions. The concept gained popularity among nationalists, conservatives, and most importantly among the military corps. Hitler himself strongly believed in this state of affairs and laid the blame on the Jewish haters, for whom the Kaiser's regime and Germany as a whole were alien. Another reason is Hitler's great love for theories of evil against the Jews. Hitler was a fan of various kinds of theories, and apart from the stab in the back, believed in other theories. For example, he believed in the protocols of the science sages, and in the fact that Jews are going to establish the world panoply, believed in their evil intentions about European nations, that, he thought, Jews want to destroy them. In fact, again, all these theories were very widespread and popular among ordinary Germans, so Hitler often used them in his rhetoric, and most importantly, believed in them himself. The next reason is communism. Hitler regarded the concept of communism as the enemy of the German people, since it was based on cosmopolitanism and rejection of nationalism. In this, Adolf saw a threat to the existence of the German nation. The German communists, as communists should be, were radically opposed to the Kaiser's Germany and the old order, which they tried to destroy. During the time of the Russian Revolution, there were attempts to create socialist republics in Germany itself. For example, the Bavarian and Bremen-Radian republics emerged for a short time. Therefore, all communists in April were seen as enemies of Germany who tried to destroy it, which again was partly true, coming from the communist concept of the World Revolution. Hitler was also strongly influenced by the experience of Russia, where the Bolsheviks came to power and began to put their ideology into practice. Hitler always saw the main enemy of the German national identity in Radian Russia, and even before coming to power, he often promised to destroy the Bolshevik power. But we were talking about the Jews. What's the connection between the communists and the Jews? Hitler had a preconception that they were practically synonymous, since the Jews were the ones who were at the helm of communism. Again, the assumptions were not born on empty space. Indeed, among the communist leaders, there were many Jews. Even the creator of ideology, Karl Marx, was a Jew. At the same time, there were many Germans among the German communists. Even the communist leader, Ernst Thälmann, who fought Hitler in the elections, came from a typical German family. That is why Hitler's overestimation is that all the communists were Jews. They were hypnical, though not unrepresentative. Of course, it is impossible not to mention racial concepts, which also became the basis for Nazism. Hitler used the ideas of racial science, which became popular in Europe at the end of the 19th century and at the beginning of the 20th century. It asserted that there are many races and all of them are nervous, and that blood mixing between races leads to degeneration. Hitler was also seized by this idea and used it as the basis of his party. More importantly, there were many different racial concepts within which Jews were considered to be of the white race. However, Hitler's racial theory was based on Gunther's racial theory. It was based on the concept of 6 European races, which were considered superior, on whose head stood the Nordics. Others were considered inferior and had to be demolished. It was believed that the superior races outnumbered the others in everything, in intellect, in attitude to work, in physical abilities, etc. Mixture between superior and inferior races was forbidden, as it led to the birth of the people. As you can see, the Jews were classified as inferior races, which deserved to be demolished. Whereas earlier it was enough for Jews to be christened in order to avoid persecution, after which they were no longer considered Jews. With the emergence of racial theory, the concept of antisemitism took on a physiological character from which a Jew simply could not rid themselves. It was this concept that gave rise to the idea of eliminating Jews as a people. When Hitler came to power in 1935, he enacted racial laws that deprived Jews of citizenship and restricted their rights, for example, to occupy certain professions. At the same time, there was a process of so-called Arization, whereby Jewish property was confiscated for the benefit of the army, thus depriving them of their business and possibilities for survival. All this ended with the fact that already at the beginning of the war, a plan of residual solution of the Jewish problem was approved, where it was decided to simply destroy Jews physically. Summarizing the results, we can say that Hitler's hatred of Jews was mainly caused by a number of deceptions, misconceptions, and theories of evil, which were inherent in the German society of that time. Traditional German anti-Semitism merged with racial theories and degenerated into the most brutal form of anti-Semitism, which led to the extermination of 6 million Jews during the Second World War. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel to not miss new videos.
I never answer to no, man, I still go.